The year was 1815. Europe was trembling once again. Just a year earlier, the world believed Napoleon Bonaparte was finished, exiled to the lonely island of Elba, stripped of his crown, his empire, his army. The kings and emperors of Europe had finally brought down the man who once ruled nearly the entire continent. But they underestimated him. In March of 1815, Napoleon escaped Elba with a handful of loyal soldiers. As he marched north through France, people gathered in the streets to see him. The soldiers sent to arrest him threw down their weapons and shouted, "Vive l'Empereur! Long live the Emperor!" Within days, the impossible had happened. Napoleon was back on the throne. Europe froze in shock. Once again, the Emperor of the French was coming for power. But this time, the world united to stop him. Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, four mighty powers, formed the Seventh Coalition. Their mission was clear: destroy Napoleon once and for all before his empire rose again. Scene 1. The calm before the storm. By June 1815, Napoleon's army had gathered near a small Belgian village, Waterloo. The land was soaked with rain, the ground turned to thick mud. Soldiers built fires under dripping tents, the smell of wet gunpowder and sweat hung in the air. Napoleon stood in his command tent, staring at a map of Europe lit by flickering candlelight. He knew this would be his final gamble. Before him stood the British Army under the Duke of Wellington, a man known for discipline and defense. And to the east, the Prussian army, led by Field Marshal Blücher, determined to crush him. If Napoleon could defeat Wellington before the Prussians arrived, he might still turn fate. But fate had already chosen its side. Scene 2. The battle begins. Morning, June 18, 1815. Thunder rolled across the sky. The battlefield was drenched and heavy with fog. At 11:30 a.m., the first French cannons roared. The ground shook as iron balls screamed through the air, tearing through lines of British infantry. Napoleon watched from horseback, his figure dark against the smoke-filled horizon. Calm, confident, unstoppable. Across the ridge, Wellington's troops held firm, defending the vital farmhouse of La Haye-Sainte and the walled farm of Hougoumont, which would become names of legend. The French attacked with fury, waves of cavalry, infantry, and artillery, but the British line refused to break. Every charge ended in slaughter. The muddy fields were littered with bodies, shattered muskets, and broken dreams. Scene 3. The fire of ambition. As hours passed, Napoleon grew impatient. He believed he saw weakness in Wellington's center. At 4 p.m., he unleashed his legendary cavalry, thousands of horsemen thundering across the field. Their sabers flashed in the pale light, their cries echoing like thunder. But Wellington's men held forms, tight formations of bayonets, impossible for cavalry to penetrate. The French horses charged again and again, but each time they fell back, the field slick with blood and rain. The emperor watched, his jaw tightening. This was not how victory looked. Meanwhile, in the distance, dark figures appeared in the woods. The Prussians were coming. Scene 4. The shadow of doom. By evening, the Prussian army had joined the fight on Napoleon's right flank. The French line began to bend, to tremble. Still, Napoleon refused to retreat. He turned to his last hope, the Imperial Guard, his elite soldiers, the pride of France, men who had never known defeat. "Advance," he commanded. The guard moved forward, tall, silent, unstoppable. Drums beat slow and steady. The British line waited, hidden in the smoke. And then, at point-blank range, they rose and fired. The front rank of the guard fell like wheat before the scythe. Volley after volley tore through them. The unthinkable happened. The guard broke. A voice shouted through the chaos, "La garde recule! The guard is retreating!" Panic spread like wildfire. Men threw down their weapons and ran. Napoleon's army, once the mightiest in Europe, dissolved before his eyes. Scene 5. The Fall of an Emperor. As darkness fell over Waterloo, rain turned the battlefield into a graveyard. Fires burned among the wreckage. The cries of the wounded echoed through the night. Napoleon sat on his horse, silent. He had given everything: his genius, his courage, his pride. And now all of it lay shattered beneath the Belgian mud. His dream of empire was gone. France would never again rule Europe. Within days, Napoleon fled to Paris, hoping to rally the people once more. But the nation was exhausted. The world had moved on. He surrendered to the British and was exiled to the lonely island of St. Helena, far in the Atlantic Ocean. There, surrounded by endless sea and silence, the once great conqueror spent his final years reflecting on what he had built and what he had lost. He died in 2021, a prisoner of his own ambition, but his legend never died. Closing narration. The Battle of Waterloo was not just a military defeat. It was the fall of a man who believed he could shape the destiny of nations, and almost did. It was the end of an empire, but the beginning of a legend. For even today, 2 centuries later, the name Napoleon Bonaparte still echoes through history. As a symbol of brilliance, power, and the unrelenting fire of human ambition. This was his final stand. This was Waterloo.